So then we'll just say.
I know, and I probably just.
My kids say I need hearing aids. I just that.
I know.
It just came up on my husband not that long ago. It's just like if there's a group of people. That it's a problem. It is. Never mind, it's okay. Well, Jim thinks he can. And then frankly, Jamie looks at me and she goes. No.
That's always.
Welcome to the world of all parents.
I'm gonna interrupt.
There's some.
I'm going to interrupt.
Oh, yes.
We're live.
We are live.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, that's good.
So we can.
Anyway, it's real.
I mean, it was the top of the road, and we could have service in the morning, because we're advertising for the teams, so the service.
It's just a mouthful.
Yeah, you should be good. You're live. Yep, you're live. You're good. So,
Right.
is that, you got control?
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I did just, I checked the out, just so you know, I did check the software.
It's my children.
That's good. Check through software. on Zoom and stuff on it, where I did a check over on everything. Like your powers, your volume's not on. Your volume. So you won't.
My hands.
You have to turn your power board. Power board. Yep. Is that on?
I mean, I don't realize. I just didn't even have to do it, but.
There you go.
Well,
And then that should light up. Okay, that's the way you want to write it up. Yeah, so.
I think.
This guy right here.
I want.
So you said, good thing, here's the error, like you saw. Okay, this one isn't gonna do anything.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is the one you want to touch.
Oh, yeah.
So that is the guy that you want to adjust, and then what you want to watch. I would turn it back for me, I would turn it so I can see it. So like when you're sitting there, you can see it, and then on top of it, what I would do.
No.
You can go live. Okay, but let them know.
No.
And then what you want to do is you want to check here to make sure that you get sound. So, no, it's not coming up with.
Yes.
Now, it might be.
That's what it's for.
You're not
We're not seeing the answers.
You're not gonna get the sound. It's gonna pick up over there.
Well,
So.
I think we'll get it.
So this guy right here.
But we.
So these you want to.
Get five.
This one.
Actual physical location is something in here.
Right.
It's not conceptual. Yeah.
It's here. It's a little bit.
How old are they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to bring you.
The other thing is, it's still. Okay, you need to build. So
We're supposed to be tonight, but it's. Right.
I probably moving my house today. I was there at the job. And if.
Talk about, or whether it's.
I'm good, how are you?
Hello. So, one last thing.
Yeah.
No, we're not gonna do that.
I know, it's a little small. Well, that's a disruption. They're not getting involved.
Any questions? All right. So text away if you need.
By the time you get control.
One of them. Okay.
Okay.
So they're out there. The fact that you're not hearing the roll and his source is.
Anyway, okay, so. I'll try. And then.
We visited.
And this morning, they were doing this, so we were then when they started. They were doing this, and then we- Oh, anyway, so.
Always.
Oh.
That's every.
They asked me.
Oh, okay.
I'll just take it out like.
Sometimes do as much as.
Oh, yeah.
September.
No.
This is really, I think it was fun. Good. We were, you know, when it's sleep over again, but and then Meredith thing.
Mark,
I know. You don't go through what?
I do a lot of it, but I enjoy it.
Good catch. Yeah. Better. I was down. Yep. Yeah. They hit me like that last week, but very. I thought it was allergies, it's my mother tried it. Yeah.
Where do you? I'm fine.
No, I'm good.
We're still not in the same room. She doesn't, she's the one that I was talking with.
Oh, well, that's the first question on the list of questions. And I'm just gonna say that it'd be premature for me to talk about the second site, what you're doing. Well, that's what we think so. We think so. I do too. No, you don't, just like me, I don't. So the buildings get run. I mean, all that is a. So, yeah, well, no, I know, but you know what, I've been hearing it. And
I mean, they're coming up and telling me, and I'm like, really?
well, we've got a lot,
That's what?
we've got a lot of details to talk about before that.
Yeah,
You know,
I know.
I'm confident, but. Excited, yes. Confident, yes. Well,
Frank will, but.
I'm just kidding. And you know what? I'll just slow down. And then this document, all the clarifications. So I'll just walk through the questions, but it's not by Brian, and then I'll answer questions. And I'll.
Yeah, and I'm gonna.
This is here, how much money is that? Sexually down about 2,000. And because you don't do it. Right. You only draw down 30. This is this question. All these programs.
Sure, most of them are in the age.
So we're hitting the need.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I just, this is.
I know, I know.
The other thing is all the time. Let's make it. Well, now it's in. This thing. And then, if they fall in, and, you know, inspire people to get a master's degree so they can teach you. So, it's warm in here. Is there air conditioning? I live with this all day today. Mine was down. Oh, there, how are you?
No air.
Oh, I think it's fine.
Huh?
I think it's fine.
It's this jacket.
It's the air's not moving. It's all, I will
It's
say
just
that.
me.
Yeah, me too.
That's the work.
Always hot.
Not in the winter though. I stopped being hot. Now I'm cool. I'm just cool. Very cold. So I was trying to get to that. It's very heavy. Because you're doing it already. Oh, I was.
Very, very straightforward. Summer temperature.
Here, that's what it's about.
About the third command, it's like.
Is this one?
Sure. That's you. Don't you say anything? Well, hi. I'm not sure if that is- I'm not willing to.
I'm not gonna get into that. Thanks for watching.
When did you come these or did Pat? Remember last week? Shouldn't you answer that last?
That's pretty fun. I think.
What did you take for your own?
What did you keep here?
Well,
Out.
So I did. Feel like bringing ours for the court system.
Oh, you're giving the four. I think you meant like. Rest.
No, I put it on.
Yeah, I'm like, what?
With part of our lease agreement.
Yeah, yeah. What'd you do?
So I printed on the emphasis.
Did my school, did the school system reimburse you? They said,
I know a guy who controls the postal.
they said, we don't care.
Yeah, that's, is when you're president, not. That's what it's like.
Well, it's my action.
I'm gonna switch this sheet on.
Okay.
All right. Need any-
Whatever you need.
I can send you the electronics. And
You're good. Too high?
My daughter got carried away.
Oh, yeah, right.
I like it.
On purpose, probably.
Yes.
It's a good look.
I like it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh,
There we go. And.
Good, the stuff we're just feeling.
Just what you feel is important. And then you have to turn it in.
Very excited about.
We have 1 minute. Oh, I'm so sorry, Josh. No, I was wondering about that. Just about took you down. Hey, there's an old friend. How are you? Good to see you. Yeah, I'm so glad to see you as well. You're looking good. Spending some time outside, it looks like. What, echoing? Echo.
Yeah.
I call the meeting to order with a roll call vote.
Rotting House,
Here.
Fox,
Here.
Stroke,
Here.
Mac,
Here.
Bergman.
Here. Approval of the agenda, the board, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented, or are there additions or corrections?
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Thank you. Are there any visitors here tonight for public comment? Seeing none, we will go on to the superintendent report. Nan, I'd like to welcome you to our board table.
Thank you.
Our interim superintendent. So go ahead.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to begin by apologizing, quite obviously, for being absent my first week on the job. And the only one more disappointed about it than you might be, would be myself, because I was bit by the COVID bug. Regretfully, it caught up with me, and very, very mild case, but as per CDC guidelines, I was quarantined for 5 days and will be masked for 5 days, but I can assure you I'm in good working order all the same. I also want to make you aware of a new hire I will be discussing later tonight, one that we discussed in meetings past and committees. We have a director of academic services prepared to be hired, Dr. Jennifer Schilling. As you know, we discussed fully expecting to hire this position at this late date in-house with our highly qualified team of potential applicants already employed by the district. However, I must tell you, she was incredibly well received by our committee and a very thorough process. Thank you to the HR team for leading that so well. She exceeded scores in all levels, and therefore we will be prepared to hire Dr. Schilling. We will still need to think, as a governing board, you will want to consider how we might continue to right size our current staff in the coming 12 to 24 months. And there are other ways that we can do that as well. The strategic plan, this is something I've been working on at home in the previous weeks and will continue to put quite a bit of time in. I'm looking forward to making adjustments in the next few weeks, and we'll be asking the administrative team to assist me with that. Also, a board work session. You'll know that we have scheduled a 1-hour work session prior to our next board meeting. We will be convening in a work session at that time to gather your input on some potential board goal areas that would also then be part of our strategic plan. It is now 5 years old and time for it to be revamped, which is perfect timing for my coming on deck with an excitement and experience in doing that type of work. Finally, Bragg Ride, coming to our neighborhood very soon. In discussion today with the board president and district office representative, we will be recommending that the central service and high school office be closed on Thursday and Friday, July 28th and 29th. Cyclists will be arriving on Thursday between 10 and noon. And as you know, our offices open at 7 and close on 3 in the summer months, with the exception of Friday, at which time we close at noon. And at about noon on Friday, cyclists will be leaving. It is going to be quite congested around the school, buildings themselves in many cases, but most particularly around the secondary campus where central services are located. All staff that are affected will be invited to do any work they would like to do from home. Will be forewarned well ahead of time. The expectation for that week is that the work required in a typical Monday through Friday at noon would still be completed regardless of the fact that the physical office will be closed. I personally will be there and maybe cycling in, but I have my vintage Schwinn from 1970 set to go, tires aired up. So you'll see me at my desk during that time, but likely the rest of the staff normally on deck during those days. Maybe the volunteers in the locker rooms, the showers and the school facilities, because as you know, RegRide takes quite an advantage of our partnership in using our area facilities and grounds. That's all I have.
Any questions, comments?
Question about that, particularly,
Yes.
is the expectation then that the employees who work in the central office would just work from home that day, or they just get the day off?
They would just get the day off unless they have essential work they want to and are able to complete from home. I will tell them that that might mean no overtime pay, but additional overtime hours Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of that week in order to be free from their responsibilities during that time.
So they would do their 35 hours or whatever the normal work is, just before Thursday.
Yeah, as best they could,
Sure.
and anything they couldn't, the expectation would be they would complete it at home.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
It'll just be, it's kind of like a bottleneck up there, so just thought it might be better getting in and out. But some of them will be volunteering throughout the district.
Yes, we do heavily rely on the volunteer staff to assist with that.
Because it's dead week. None of the students can help with any of the things during that week because they can't have contact with. There's coaches and things. Help me explain it if I don't know how that's right. They can't have,
The athletic.
so they,
association-
even if the athletic club is doing something, it can't be staffed by kids, it has to be staffed by adults. So,
So we really need our adults, and we have also discussed this with our director of operations and our vocal displeasure with the choice of dead week aligning in those communities affected by RegRide. Because as you know, some of those young men and young ladies would be a huge help to us that week if we could use it.
okay, the next thing, anything else? Okay,
Well, I have a question,
Okay.
so this is on the agenda and the consent agenda, and it's not something we've talked about, but we have a couple people who are gonna be doing, the Leader in Me, which is a great program. It'd be nice to get some updates on how that program is going and the two buildings that we have it in and what's going on. And I know that obviously, it's new for you, but we're continuing that program, so it'd be good to know just how well it's going.
That's an excellent opportunity to help us learn more about that. In fact, Dr. Schultz and I were just discussing that. So I will be able to contact the building leaders and perhaps we can get a genesis for the program, background, outcomes, and learn more about it overall.
Okay, great, thank you so much.
okay. Anything else? All right. Mr. Ingram is here to talk to us about our insurance.
Yes, hi, I'm Bob Ingram with Sisseton Associates to discuss the increase for your 2022-2023 renewal with EMC Insurance. I'm going to highlight, I've been talking to Evan about this. The two main areas of increase that we had this year in the insurance program was the property and the workers' compensation. In the property premium went up roughly 29%, but a lot of that has to do with cost of materials and the availability to get those materials to do replacement costs on structures. We had a couple of buildings that were underinsured replacement cost wise, so we raised those values. I ran that by Evan. He said, if that's what we need to do, let's go ahead and do it, and we did. So from that standpoint, on the property side of it, the increase is, like I said, more driven by inflation because of the derecho that hit in 2020, storms that in the last 3-4 years have created a tremendous increase in premiums. We've seen it from every carrier we have, from homeowners to commercial lines. Okay. I see the NIAC gentleman sitting over here. I believe in the paper, you slowed down a little bit because of increased construction costs. Did you not? Okay, you're finding that to be substantially higher than anticipated. Okay, so the key is here, we want to make sure our properties are properly insured if we lose one. We want to make sure we have the monies to place that, put that property back up again, brand new. The second area is the workers' compensation. Your modification factor last year was a 0.71. Your modification factor this year is a 1. So that's a 29% increase. Your modification factor is driven by losses, claims. Indemnity claims affect the modification factor more than medical claims. Medical claims don't have any really basis on that. So if we have somebody who has a cut finger, they go to the doctor, that's a medical claim. That really has no bearing on your mod factor. Indemnity claims is when an employee is injured and they're home off work and can't come back to work until they're healed. So this brings up early return to work. If there's some kind of program that the school would consider putting in, I don't know if you have one now. I've talked to school boards through the years about that. If you don't, EMC can assist you in putting together an early return to work so we can get that employee back to work so we can reduce the indemnity side of the workers' compensation. The other thing is I went back 3 years because that's how your rate is predicated. So we're coming off, we're going to have the rate for the modification factor is going to be year 22, 21, and 20. 2021 was not a good year claim wise. We had a lot of indemnity losses. If the board would like to see these claims, to see what kind of claims they are, I'd be more than happy to supply that to Evan. And then if you have any questions and want me to come back, I'd be more than happy to do that as well. The other thing I want to revert back to the property. Right now, the school carries a $1,000 deductible. Consider going to a $2,500 deductible or a $5,000 deductible. I did this with the city on their renewal 2 years ago. They went to a $5,000 deductible. The $1,000 deductible, I carry a $1,000 deductible on my home. So it makes sense to me that the board really should take a look at higher deductibles on your property to see what kind of savings are there, and I can certainly get that too.
Would having the information from 2021 help us decide whether or not an early return to work program would be beneficial?
It could,
It could,
yes, it could,
probably not a bad idea then.
it could.
Yeah, so,
I think you need to see it. I really do.
so we'll be discussing some of this further on the July 20th work session that has been proceeded, so this is an agenda item to discuss further. But I wanted him to come down and present the opportunities that I could bring information to you guys.
Sure. Okay. And then as far as the deductibles are concerned, I think that when we're looking at commercial or this kind of property, even $5,000 deductible seems a little on the lower side. There are other options.
If you go, you're better savings. We did this with the city. We even looked at a $10,000 deductible, but with building rates, the higher the deductible you go to, the savings isn't that much. Okay, so really your best areas to save money in deductibles would be look at a 2,500 and a 5,000. Good question.
We want to get us, save us the most.
Yes.
Have we always maintained a $1,000 deductible? As what
Yes.
you've had? Okay.
Mhm.
And is it, has anyone ever that you remember you're working with us researched a 2,500 or $5,000?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But back then, before we had all this, this inflation with building costs, back then, your property premiums were so low that $1,000 to go to a $2,500 deductible, why would you do that?
Sure.
But now things have really drastically changed, so you really need to look at those deductibles, and I can get that for Evan.
So is there a problem with us, like not voting on this tonight and waiting
No.
until the, okay?
No, if I get the information to Evan, you have a meeting and you decide to make a change, I believe I can get EMC to retro that back to your July 1 renewal, so you get a full year credit. They've done it before.
Can I just make sure I understood this? So in your, attachment that you sent, the letter on page 2, it has property liability blanket, and in 21, we had basically $72 million, and then in 22, we're looking at basically $93 million, is that right?
That is correct.
So that's, we lose everything, that would be the check EMC we got last already done,
If we had
a derecho, right?
that came in, one occurrence,
Yeah.
that wiped out every piece of property the school owns, building, contents, field lights, track, I don't care what it is, you would have up to 92 million to build that, everything back. The only thing is the contents. I have no way, nor does EMC, of ascertaining what you values you have in contents at each of your location. So the contents have been established many, many years ago. We've been increasing those values anywhere from 1% to 2% through the years. Not knowing, because you take the new middle school, all the new equipment that you have in there, now contents are not, is anything that's not attached to the structure. Chairs, desks, you name it. So that's the only thing that we really can't tell you, are we properly insured on contents? I have no idea. You would have to do,
The reason I ask is, you know, because you see, like, your homeowner's insurance policy has grown, most of you, like, every year you're seeing it go up because of building costs, material costs, just things are going up. My question is, you know, we've looked at some numbers for, like, the replacement cost of this building. And, you know, that 92 million just seems kind of low, based on what we've seen recently. And then maybe that's accurate. I don't know how they determine those numbers, but
we get this information. We get this information from EMC. They come out and they do replacement costs because they know the square footages, they know what's inside a building. So we rely on them and the fact of all the schools that EMC insured, which is over 90% of the school districts in Iowa.
Yep.
We rely on them to tell us, okay, we did a replacement cost on this building at the middle school, and this is what we're coming up with. Now, certainly I can go back to EMC and say, okay, are we sure on this one? Because I understand what you're saying. If you look at that, I believe this structure in the new middle school, I think it's 55 million. That's the new replacement cost on it.
That would be kind of low, I think.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think it would be like
Right.
at least 10 million light or maybe 15, based on what we've recently seen in
Right.
just replaced on this. And that's my concern, is if we did have a big event
Right.
and they said, well, we value this building at 20 million, right? And we're like, well, we can't even replace it for that, right? We'd have to have whatever the number is. I just don't want us to be in a situation where we can't replace it.
Let me, Josh, let me revisit EMC on these replacement cost values.
Thank you.
And I'll get back to you.
Center Washington, middle school here.
Mhm.
I think all four of them there.
That's a good point.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So we'll, what do we do?
We made a motion, if you guys want to table it, second, if you guys want to move forward and approve it, you can do that as well. So,
Why can we approve it with, but we do want to see the changes, that change with replacement costs as well as.
Right, so if we table it tonight, we'll have our July 24th session, we can visit all this, can kind of get a feel where you guys want to go, bring a proposal to the board. For approval.
If I make a motion to table this, to look at new information on the work session and bring it back as agenda item 25th, I think it is. Then I'll make that motion. I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to table this agenda item at this time and
Revisit it.
revisit it after,
Do it.
at the next meeting with new information. You got it? Okay.
Robert, will that give you enough time to go to the insurance company? Ask for an updated estimate?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Will that give you enough time to go back to EMC and get enough?
I doubt that I'll have enough time to get the replacement costs.
How
Okay,
long does that, do you know like how long that would take?
it would take, it may take a week or so to do that. I need to reach out to them. It may be sooner than that. I don't know.
So do you think you can have it by the 25th?
I can try. Okay.
Okay.
Then that would be another.
We would have the deductible information. with the-
You would have that probably tomorrow.
And I'm sure they'd always let us increase.
Oh, Pat, yes.
Yeah.
I've never seen an insurance company ever back away from that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no.
Thank you for your
Motion
time.
carried.
Thank you.
Table. Thank you very much. All right. The next one is, Nanette Smith with our special education delivery.
Okay, so just as a little bit of a refresher for you guys, this is the final step in, we came to you in February to approve the committee to revise our special ed delivery plan. So we had a group of teachers and parents that worked on this committee, worked from February until honestly May. We worked quite a bit on this to make sure we were getting it right or to fit our needs. And so it's been approved by the AEA. That was the stuff that comes before approval from our school board. So I think we've got, do you have it attached?
Mhm.
Okay. So I just wanted to point out the major changes that we made with the delivery plan was basically just we created more detailed criteria to determine student care, teacher caseloads. And the reason for this we felt was just the increased need for social emotional support for students, more health needs for students, and then just to make sure that we have the right curriculum supports in place for kids, for students so that they can be successful. So we just detailed that a little bit more. You can see that if you're looking at it, you can see the worksheet there.
And then I just have one quick question for you.
You bet.
On that document on page 2,
Mhm.
it just had, and put into effect, it's the end of the second paragraph. And it just
Yeah.
didn't have, is that today's date? Is that July 1st? Is that when?
It'll be after you guys approve it.
Okay.
So I don't ever put it, I want to make sure stuff goes through before I just assume and put dates in there. So after you guys approve it, we will definitely put tonight's date on there. So. But if you'll look at that worksheet, it really, and the teachers, I have to give a shout out to our committee of special ed teachers. They really did put a lot of time and energy and thought into this, just to make sure that our kids are getting what they need and that it's accounted for so that we can make sure that we continue to give the best possible services to our students. So I want to just point out that was a major change. And then the other change that we added was at the very end, it just talks about how the delivery system is going to meet our school and our state targets. So it just kind of outlines how we're going to look at the subgroup of special ed or IEP students, and if they're making progress on the state and the district goals too. So it kind of outlines there how we will do that. So I think that's just a good way for us as a district to continue to monitor that and keep our eyes on that. It was posted on the website from May 3rd to May 18th. It has to be open for that public comment. So we did do that. So now I think the next step is for you guys to approve, and then we will slip that date in there for you so that it's legit, and then get that ready to go, and we'll use that as we start the school year.
Do we have any valuable public comment?
We did not have any public comment, which is not unheard of. I don't think we worked with the AEA, helped us quite a bit as well. Jody Albertson and the special ed reps helped us as well. And they said typically you don't get a lot of comments, but we did have parents that did come and sit in on when we reviewed it and gave input. So that was helpful too. So
That looks like a very comprehensive list.
yeah,
It does.
yeah. So
I make a motion to approve the special education service delivery plan as presented. Okay.
Been moved and seconded to approve the special education service delivery plan as presented. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. 5-0.
thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Nyack Regional Center Educational Service Agreement. Dr. Schultz is here.
Good evening, and it's great to be back to talk a little bit about this exciting project. You'll remember that I was here some time ago with a soft memorandum of understanding around a concept for a career center in Charles City. And those plans continue to move forward. 6 of the 7 school districts that are participating have already signed the final agreement. So this is the final board to do that. So I wanted to make sure that I came in person tonight to answer any questions that you might have about this. So There are some new faces here, so bear with me just a minute as I kind of talk about this. So several years ago, the legislature passed a career technical education enhancement bill with one of the goals to place a regional career center with high quality CTE programs within 30 miles of every high school in the state of Iowa. Okay, we did not have a career center, so we were the first college to receive $1 million grant to build one of these in Forest City. We had 4 school districts. We met all the criteria. We had some great private funding over there, and we were the first to get approved and to construct one. With that synergy, the eastern side of our district, including Charles City, started to get excited about this, and we put 7 school districts together, crossing 3 community college districts, which is unique. It's never been done before. Okay, but it's the right thing to do. And those colleges are on board with us to do this and send students from their districts to the center. So the planning process has been, it's quite a ways along. If you look in front of you, there's a diagram of the most recent draft of the facility that would be located at the fairgrounds, starting from scratch. And on the back of that, you'll see the estimated cost. And to your point, they're creeping. They're estimating it at this point from $4.4 to $4.7 million. I'm concerned about being able to bring in sheet metal for the outside, and get that done by our timeline, which we had hoped to be August of 23. So that's the plan as it sits today. It's about 18,000 square feet. And it's yet a draft, but we're getting awfully close. So that's really where we're at. The 4 programs that we selected, it's important to know that we based those 4 programs on the number of job openings in this area of the state. Okay, so Iowa Workforce Development provided those. So the 4 academies that will be within this center currently are healthcare, construction, advanced manufacturing, and information technology. Okay, so those are the 4. Now, I'd be the first to tell you, I don't know if we've got those right, but we do have to start somewhere. And it seems that if there's jobs open, we should try to fill them. That's part of our job as a college. Okay, I would say I would almost bet that 5-10 years down the road, the programs are different, depending on employment needs, student interest, school interest, all of those things. But that decision will be made on an ongoing basis by this consulting committee that we have. And there's a question that you asked me about the consulting committee. The state asked us not to call it an advisory committee because we already have those. Excuse me. So when you say consulting committee, that was just a nice way to say an advisory committee, but they will have input into it. The school districts really drive the train on this, not NIAC. The programs that we bring forward need to meet the needs of your students. And we'll do our best to deliver those. If we have the program, we'll bring it here. So this is a bit of a good faith relationship as well. We're going to revisit the contract, this agreement that we signed today, the billing, the programming on an annual basis. Okay, so we have to have faith in each other. We're going to do that well. Okay, because this is kind of new territory for all of us. So that's kind of some overarching comments. Now let me just walk through the questions that Mr. Jurens provided me that the board pushed forward. Okay, and I'm going to take them one at a time. The first one is that there's been some talk that there may be a different location in play in addition to the fairgrounds. That's true, but it would be premature for me to talk about where that location is. But it offers some savings for sure. It's within the city limits. It has gas, it has water, it has power, it has internet, it has parking. So some savings we could save. So we're working through that. We visited the site last week.
The size is the same.
The size may be bigger if we can save some money. You know, we're on the early stages. So we brought the mechanical, electrical engineers. What's that?
It wouldn't shrink. The size.
Oh, no. In fact, it might grow because the cost per square foot could go down substantially. And the college may choose to expand for growth of programs that we haven't even identified yet. But basically, we'd lay this footprint in there to deal with the high school programming that we have right now. In addition to that, we're also going to close the center downtown and move those services to one location. Okay, so wherever it ends up, most likely we'll sell the building downtown.
Does Nyack own that building?
We do,
Sell that.
we do, and its estimated value is about $500,000. And we would take that $500 and apply it, 500,000 and apply it to this. Okay, so I'm sitting here today with a state grant of $1 million, the sale of that, and donations just shy of $2 million right now. Okay, the rest of the funding is gonna come, when we're done fundraising, the rest of the funding will come from Nyack and our bond issue that we passed in 2020, 7 days before we shut down for the pandemic. So luck was with me that day, right? Okay, so that's in play, and as that develops, you know, we've met with the owner. We have a lot of details to work out what that might look like in terms of a lease and some of those kinds of things. So we're going to continue to look. The Fair Board's still supportive of that location. But you know, if we can save $1 million to $1.5 million, it makes sense that we might take a look at that, right? So we'll see.
Ask about that one. Do you know when you'll make that decision to either build or move forward with the other option? If
Pretty-
it's on it.
Pretty quickly. We're waiting this week for a report from the electrical and mechanical engineers to give us some estimates. The architects already working with the facility to change that floor plan to meet what that facility looks like. And then we can start to talk about what the real costs are.
So you think maybe by the end of the month, you would have a general idea of which direction you want to go?
I hope so.
Okay.
That would be the goal.
Okay.
And a couple other things to think about. Materials and supplies, I talked about sheet metal. This building would not need that. It's got a structure on the outside. We can just go in and do a leasehold improvement on the inside. So we're looking sheetrock walls and, you know, pretty much off we go. One of the other things is the architect believes that we might be able to hit our August 23 date if we go to an existing facility opposed to new construction. It's just going to take a little longer. So again, another reason to really give it some thought.
So the object with that particular plan will be a lease instead of a purchase.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the building's larger than one. Okay. So
Would the building, would we lease the whole thing or would somebody else have part of it?
that would be up to the owner, but I'm not going to lease the whole thing. Okay, I just don't have the
That
need
wouldn't
for that much
interfere with
space.
the educational.
Yeah.
Environment. It wouldn't interfere with that at all.
No. No, we would. Those are some of the items in the lease that we'll have to talk about, right?
Sure.
And there might be some businesses we might not want located right directly by a continuing education facility. But I think, you know,
Is there anybody in the building now
no. No, it's vacant.
when you're done? I just have one question about the schools.
Okay, let me get through the questions and then I'll open it up to whatever else I might jar as you go through this. Okay, the second thing is, what is Nyack's expected contributions from the school districts? Okay, Charles City specifically is the largest school in the consortium. And so your agreement would ask you to pay for 32 seats. So that'd be 8 seats in each one of the academies at the cost of $3,300 the first year. Okay, that number will increase at the same percentage as our tuition does on campus moving forward. Okay, so that number will grow. And then in addition to that, we're asking all 7 school districts to contribute $8,750 a year from whatever fund works for you. PEPAL, sales tax. Most of the conversation, Ann, was really to try to drive as much of that into those funds as possible to relieve the general fund whenever. Because, you know, if you pay the college through whatever fund, once I receive that money, I can spend it. There's no restrictions once I receive that. So that was the discussion amongst the superintendents, and I think we can work through that. Is that number right? We'll see, right? We think it is. And we're asking for 10-year commitments from all 7 of the school districts to the number of seats that they have per their enrollment. Okay, so it's a 10-year model. How much does Charles City spend with Nyack now for concurrent enrollment? In 21-22, Charles City, there's a sheet in front of you, a high school impact report that I share with you, and I'll just get to the totals. Last year, the bill was $96,316. And according to the state, the revenue off of your supplemental weighting was $31,640. So your general fund had to fill a gap of about $65,000. Did I get that right? Yes. And so interestingly enough, 2 years ago, it was about $107,000. So your enrollment has decreased in concurrent enrollment. And another interesting fact is Charles City is the second largest school district that we serve in our 19 school district territory. And you are the 12th most credits in concurrent enrollment right now. So you've slipped down that pipeline a little bit. Some of that's because of the degrees available in your teaching staff and other items. It's interesting, if you look at Hampton Dumont, not in the top 5 of our schools, they have the most credits, even more than Mason City High School. They've made a real effort to get teachers certified and provide these opportunities for their students. And there's also a piece, I think, in Charles City's enrollment right now is of all of we had 175 students enrolled in concurrent enrollment last year. Okay, that would be, that's not duplicated. So if they've taken 2 classes, it is duplicated. So if they've taken 2 classes, they count twice. But of those 175, only 55 of those were CTE classes. You draw down more money for CTE classes than you do arts and science classes. So that skews that number a little bit in terms of the $31,000 that you draw down. All of these classes at the academy or the career center will be CTE classes and be eligible for additional weighting, okay, above and beyond the arts and science. Okay, and I'll let Ann get into the details of that as she takes a look at that budget. Okay, I talked about the selected programs. There was a question about Charles, or about Forest City and our enrollments. We opened that center in October, which isn't optimal. You know, it's hard to recruit people for something they can't see. We've nearly doubled those numbers in 1 year. So we think that'll continue to grow as we move forward. We've seen some growth in, for example, IT. We had in information technology, first year we had 2 students. Well, this year we have 10. So as we build those programs and kids get to learn about those, and school districts get to understand them better, you know, that's the way that works.
Is it fair to say that because of when NIAC was able to open it, because of building, just students didn't have choices when they had to make their schedule and stuff, and it just that had an impact on it?
Right, it definitely had an impact. It definitely had an impact because, you know, school districts are trying to schedule in February, March, April, May at the latest, right, Brian? And so, you know, they hadn't even had a chance to look at it. We took them to the site and showed them construction, you know, which wasn't a finished shiny product. And, you know, it looks do matter. The physical, you know, gosh, the physical space matters when people come in and see it. It's pretty impressive. And we don't believe this one will be any less impressive, whether it's at the fairgrounds or at this additional site. So we're going to do it right.
Josh, I talked to my cousin who's the middle school counselor up there, and he said that the interest was getting a lot greater than it had been in the beginning. That's at Forest City anyway, so I don't know about the rest of the school. I called them.
And you kind of have to build that pathway for students. And we started doing some middle school activities in there and some camps, and you know, we don't have that fully built out yet. But you know, the school districts and the college need to help build these pathways for students. We know there's more than 2 students in 4 high schools that should be pursuing information technology, right? It's just getting comfortable with leaving campus, going to a program, knowing that they can be successful, and that's our job in the high school staff's job as well. And what is the process for program selection? I talked about that. We use straight IWD job openings numbers. And so that's how we started with it. Does the consulting committee have input? Absolutely. They'll absolutely have input. That'll be made up of businesses, school districts, college personnel. But again, you know, our job as a college is to meet the needs, not drive the program. We have to have the programming, but we want to certainly meet the needs of the students. Who will be providing instruction? A combination. We would love to engage any certified instructor that works at one of these 7 high schools. That's an appropriate spot for them. You know, the goal is not to replace high school teachers, but to engage them. So we're going to look to the school districts first, because in some of these areas in small schools, for example, advanced manufacturing, they don't have 7 classes to teach every day. They might only have 3. So what are those people doing the rest of the day? Well, you know, study hall, you know, pick that assignment, we'd rather have their expertise in the classroom. So if we can take advantage of quality high school teachers, we're gonna do that. We can't fill those 4 positions with that. We'll have to use NIAC personnel, whether it's full-time or part-time, and we're using both at the Forest City Center. We send full-time instructors there for advanced manufacturing right now. So it'll be a combination, but we're gonna work with our partners to staff that with the best people we can find. Will the districts who are buying seats have to pay to use the facility for other events? You know, that's a great question. We haven't talked a whole lot about internally. What I would tell you is we have a rental policy across the college. And when people rent that facility kind of outside of the scope of the work we're doing with the partnership, we're going to charge them. We do have a nonprofit rate and we have a for-profit rate. So we charge the dance studio more than we charge the Boy Scouts, as an example. So anything in the educational realm, I'm an old superintendent, and so I see this as an opportunity to do a lot of high school programming as well. And if we start doing FFA for a number of schools there in the afternoon, or whatever might come out of this sharing, I think this just opens all kinds of doors. We want to be part of that, and we're going to want to be fair about that. But there will be utility costs, there'll be some things you have to factor in. But again, we're going to be a good partner. We're going to be a good partner, and that's going to serve it much like it does downtown. We'll have community education going on. We'll have continuing education going on. We'll have training going on in there in afternoons, evenings, and weekends. And our goal is to use that thing as much as we possibly can, right? Get every dime out of that we can. I think the last question is, or one of the last questions is, what businesses have you engaged? And what have they had to say about the programs at the facility? So just let me give you a little bit of a rundown of the people that we either received support from or visited with today. Garden Enterprise, they're an investor. First Citizen, First Security, CUSB. We have several private donors in the community that have already stepped up. We've met with Zoetis, Cambridge, and have had some communication with both Valent and Valero. We've got an application into them for some funding. And I'll be honest with you, one of my first meetings when I came to town in 2013, early 14, was with Cambridge. And at that time, there was a need for some technical training for them. And we put together kind of a technician 101 program using Zoetis, Valent, and Cambridge staff. And it just never took off, to be honest with you. And at that time, things have changed. Cambridge was probably the highest paying employer in the area, or one of them. They weren't really having a particular problem hiring staff. It's different now. It's really competitive out there. And in fact, in that design, since I met with Cambridge in the classroom, we built science tables, sinks, gas, the ability to train microbiology and biologists in this space. So we responded directly to those needs of that business. Zoetis and Valent aren't that far off. They do a lot of the same type of work. So we're preparing ourselves to meet that need as well. Interestingly enough, we don't have a full-blown biotech degree at the college, but this might be our foot in that door. So we'll build up from the continuing education side and hopefully continue to grow that. But if you think about biology and microbiology courses there in the summer, anybody who's going into nursing or healthcare could jump right in with those employees or employers and do that. So we're listening to them. Of course, the gardens, they're excited about the advanced manufacturing side, the welding side. And again, we tried to build these programs so everyone who leaves has some kind of a nationally recognized credential after year one. And our goal at NIAC is to get them to pursue a degree at the college or some other community college. Okay. We're in just kind of a dangerous time for young people where their jobs are there, the money's there. But I remember those in the 80s when my classmates jumped into food processing at $25 a union job. And by my 5th year class reunion, they were all unemployed and looking for their next step. And so we want to make sure that we think long-term for our students and not the short-term, just filling jobs and getting them in the workforce. But how can we build programs where they can do both? That's the goal. So those are my questions. And sir, you had an additional question.
I did, and this answered it for me,
Okay,
so I'm good.
perfect.
Okay, any other questions?
Dr. Schultz, thank you so much. I think that was really helpful to understand kind of where you're at and what you're doing. Really appreciate that. Great answers. So sounds really good.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
Pleasure to do it.
Thank you.
So I make a motion to approve the signing of the Nyack Regional Career Center Educational Service Agreement between North Iowa Area Community College and Charles City Community Schools. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the signing of the Nyack Regional Career Center Educational Service Agreement between North Iowa Community College and Charles City Community School District. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve, for coming. Okay. Mr. Durant, open enrollment compensation.
My one carryover from last week. So this is pretty quick. You go back, last board meeting, I was originally gonna do it, but at the time, House file hadn't passed yet, hadn't been signed off by the governor, so I figured I'd just put it to this one, just so you guys are kind of filled in. It's a pretty small change, but it does create a little bit of an impact. So previous open enrollment guidance from the state, kind of show you the steps. Applicants were granted open enrollment as long as it was received prior to March 1st. And they could, if they applied prior to March 1st, they could open enroll the following school year. After it was received by the district, we could pass it on to the next district. If it was received after March 1st, the district had the choice at that point in time. They could deny it unless there was cause. So cause could be kind of one of the big ones we typically see. Kind of some changes was around bullying. If there's a situation involving a student where they felt like a different school district would be better for them, they could still grant it. There was some other cause that was just kind of a big one. So even if it was received after March 1st, they had the option to still allow it to go. Receiving district always has that option whenever there is an open enrollment based on the resources. It's the language in there. So they can't, like, if it's a student that needs a special service or needs something special, they can say no if they do not have the resources available or do not have the finances. It's typically what drives that. Then the fourth thing, these are just kind of my 4 bullet points. Any student who has open enrolled still has a 90-day ineligibility period unless cause is justified. And this cause goes a little bit more into like, they're forced to move because of a job, it's a relocation, or if it kind of goes back into that cause before, that can be waived as a district. Go ahead. House File 2589 really eliminated step number 1, which is putting that due date on it, which kind of nulls out step 2. So go ahead and one more. So this is where the new open enrollment guidance looks like. Really, an application for open enrollment can be granted if received at any time. There is no March 1st. If it's received after, it has to have cause, which really eliminates that step 2. Step 3 is still there. Receiving district still has to evaluate, make sure that they do have the resources available to be able to house or to be able to serve that student correctly. And the 90-day ineligible period is still there. So this is kind of where the rule has changed. It's not a huge change. I just figured it's necessary to show you guys because this is where last month, right after this was signed, we did have 3 students who were waiting on open enrollment. They had filed under the guidance we were given, said go ahead and approve those. We haven't received a lot of official guidance other than just go ahead and approve anybody who was sitting on an open enrollment. These are for a variety of different reasons. Some of them are because of different family or wanting to just change districts for different reasons. Kind of the last piece, because I think that's the big question that probably makes everybody nervous. Do we predict there's going to be a large increase in these? Honestly, from what I'm seeing, I would say no. Students always had the option to open enroll. Probably where we're going to see our change is going to be, we might have a little bit more of like a kind of a rash open enrollment, or like, hey, I'm kind of upset about this, so now I'm going to fill out the open enrollment paperwork. In my experience, a lot of those don't always follow through on it anyway. I think that kind of goes on the in and outside, kids who want to leave, but also on the inside where I don't think we're going to see a big change since it was always an option before. So not a huge thing. I just figured back the month before, since we were doing something, I wanted to make sure the board knew that we were going to be approving this. Any questions?
Maybe a statement. So it sounds like with the governor's change in law that really it's kind of moved where they can just kind of make changes however the parents feel.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of picture open enrollment. Typically, how open enrollment was is there wasn't a lot of talk of open enrollment until the end of school year. And that's typically where they're kind of start evaluating, kind of go back to what we were talking about scheduling. And it's like, if I want to make this change, seems like it always fell. Not a lot of families always hit that March 1st deadline. So you get that one a month later and it's like, well, we're going to deny just purely because of the deadline. Now all of a sudden there is no deadline anymore. So yeah, it's kind of a wash. I mean, just being honest, it'll probably open the door. We'll have some, we'll probably have a few more than normal, but I think it'll be pretty much an even in and out. Yeah, pretty simple. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay, South City new bus change order.
Is Jerry here? Because the way I read it is the letter that we got from Bluebird Bus has either, they were saying it's between $5,000 and $10,000 per bus, but the actual cost us is only $1,500.
It's $1,500 per bus,
But it's
so these are between. So it'd be $3,000.
But they, I guess maybe the letter was just kind of confusing. And why did they send a letter for $5,000 to $10,000? It was only $1,500.
Dang time.
Oh, okay.
So most of the schools across the state saw an impact of 1,500 to 4,500.
Oh.
Our cost was 1,500 per bus. We're over 2 this year.
Yeah.
Total cost of 3,000.
Okay.
Reason behind that, seat cost went up for whatever reason. So
I'd make a motion then, the message, maybe, unless we discuss it back. More. We discuss it more.
Well, we can always discuss after.
Okay, all right, and I make a motion to approve the director of operations, Jeremy, proceed with wearing the new bus with change order.
Plural buses.
Just one
Portal
bus.
buses.
Yeah.
But it just says bus, so I'll say
Only
buses.
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 For a second.
Yes.
What you need to do, okay, sorry.
Got on it before David.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Director of Operations Mary Mitchell to proceed with ordering the new buses with the change order proposed. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. 5-0. Passes. Okay, the next one is the legislative priorities that we have to discuss. It's a long thing that I sent to you, but it just kind of was an overview of if you feel strongly about something, I think we need to tell IASB that we want our lobbyists to work on it.
This is something that we would pay to be a member of this or part of it.
Yeah.
What's it cost?
I would have to look that up for you and get back to you. Look that up for you.
Yeah. Just let me know. Looking at that thing there, I assume they do that every year, but it's certainly it's a political agenda. A
Yeah,
lot of things that you either agree or disagree on. I guess my thought after I skimmed through it, tried to read through it, is that as a board, not really sure why as a board, we would either agree or disagree with certain, there's a lot of things in there I disagree with, there's some that I do agree with, but as an individual,
mhm.
as a board, I'm not sure why we're making any kind of comment on it as a whole.
Because we pay for the lobby, I mean, our membership includes the lobbying that IASB does for schools and school boards. So like, for instance, school funding, in my mind, is a no-brainer because we want to have funding for public school education, because that's why we have to support it, that's why we have public schools, but maybe you don't agree with the way it's talked about in here, but funding is kind of a big deal, and we want to know about it sooner rather than later in the legislative session so that we can do budgeting for the next year and staffing and things like that. I mean, I'm just using that. Me personally, I think mental health is important. And since the pandemic, you can read all over about the increase in depression and the increase in anxiety that students have. You know, so that's one of my kind of things. So that's why we do this, and we buy into the lobbying at the legislature.
What
And
else?
do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that was a good example of an explanation.
What else do they do for the school board members?
Well, we get an email every Friday from them and they show us charts so that we can check on where we fall within different things, like how much money we're getting for bus, for instance, I'm just giving you an example, supplemental bus aid compared to other school districts, or where we fall within the special ed deficit. They also do a lot of education of school boards, or just what their role is, and they update our policy handbook according to the legislative laws that are passed. So they have 2 attorneys on, it saves us from having to do that all on our own. Help me, guys. What else?
Like legislative compliance, stuff that they
Yeah,
do
things that we have to
for
comply
the
with.
process.
Support for handbook development, professional learning or facilitation that might be specific to the needs of any given board. Many resources, comparisons, historic data on salaries, for example.
Another thing, they provide toolkits for like, teacher education week, things like that, just like little.
David, did
things
you have
that
like
are
a general,
easy.
David, did you have like a general question as to like the legitimacy or?
I looked at this, first of all, 18 pages, that's a lot of
Yeah.
verbiage there.
That's why I sent it out early.
Legislative resolution, there were 33 of them. And there's quite a number of them that most substantial amount of what it is. I don't necessarily agree with, and I wouldn't want somebody to lobby for the school board in the fashion that they direct.
Well, actually, the last page is exactly what the priorities were. The rest of them are just examples of what they could be. The last page, last 2 pages, I guess, give the legislative priorities for last year: dropout,
For that,
risk, mental health, teacher recruitment and licensure, which they lobby for things like that, school funding policy, and supplemental state aid. Those were the 5 areas that were the priorities of. I'm not gonna say that all school districts belong to IASB, but the majority of them do.
And this is just like a recommendation from the board, and then there's a voting process that happens at the IASB convention, where they essentially, every school district votes on the priorities, and that's how they become. They pick the 5, out of them, and then that's the ones that they go after. So, we could put in 10, and none of the ones that we put in might make it through the voting process ultimately, lobby or, upright.
To answer your previous question, we pay $775 a year for our membership.
yeah, that's. Do we pay any other fees if we do or anything?
No, this is a free resource. Only other fee is if you guys do go to convention, there's sometimes hotel fees and travel costs to that, but.
I would say what they propose or what is being proposed that they lobby for. Not generally along the lines of something I would.
I think you have to think of, like I try to think of not my personal agenda, but the agenda of public schools, because that's the board that I'm serving on.
I understand that as an individual, I'm interested in school educational, school plays. And there's a lot of things in here that don't serve that to me.
I think we, I think,
Sort of, well, that's, it's a big lobby.
I think what we can potentially agree on as a board is school funding is vital to the health and well-being of a public education. And we know that local districts have unique needs that when you have the local funding, you can make needs that are localized to your own district. So these other things are compromise or include some of those things, but
Well, almost all of these, like dropout net risk, that is a money. And you get money for that. You get teacher recruitment and licensure. It's definitely an issue right now because there's a shortage of teachers are leaving the profession and there's a shortage. I know right now we're still looking for a couple of special ed teachers, for instance. Licensure, you know, they loosened up during COVID, you know, a little bit about who could teach and now it's getting back there. They took off the praxis test. I don't know whether that's good or bad, but that's what happened. And supplemental state aid, that has to do with funding as well, and obviously school funding policy, and most of the things have to do with funding. You know, so anyway.
And also at the convention, which I've gone to twice, and 1 year it was virtual because of COVID. The things that I went to, which were presented for everybody to go to, were very uplifting and motivating for me,
And information,
especially as a new board member, my first year, and informational, and I think the convention is very worthwhile.
well, and not only, I mean, do we have a shared learning experience, but I think it's good for when we go out for dinner, you know, or together and we just spend that time in the car. It's good for us as a board to bond a little bit, I guess, if you want to say that word. So anyway, that's just my opinion. So anyway, so does anybody have anything that they,
Also, in the prior years, we've had two people go to as delegate. One is the person who actually does the voting, and the other person is there just to help them.
right,
So, I guess it's up to you. How you would do it, but consider
Well-
who is passionate and wants to do that.
not necessarily.
I'm slide back to the table.
Are you?
Jenny said she really enjoyed
Oh, right.
it. She loved it. and wanted to do it.
Well, I kind of enjoyed going, but I like to also go to the pre-conference sessions. And I went to the legislative session last year. I even got up the car. Did that. Imagine me, what? But, Michelle went with me last year, Michelle Jones and Josh came, right?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. Would you like to be the delegate, Josh?
I'd be happy to do that, sure.
Does anybody have a problem with that?
Just think now, bro.
So do you want me to just put funding, kind of, the funding ones? Okay, I personally also think local control is extremely important, but I'm sure not everybody agrees with me on that.
We're ultimately responsible for the operation.
Right, well, yeah, and what? It has changed, David, in the last few years. We don't have as much local control as we used to have. And there, you know, when a lot of the legislative things are trying to take more control away from the local people in the school districts. So that's my opinion. Okay. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move to, well, sorry.
make a motion. To approve funding.
Funding.
I'll make a motion to approve funding legislative priorities as discussed and delegate Josh Mack as the pointers.
Is there a second?
Sure, I'll second.
To approve, it's been moved and seconded to approve funding legislation legislative, excuse me, he's for me to say, priorities as discussed and delegate Josh Mack as the point person at the convention. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, say no. Passes 5-0. Nanette. Would you like to talk about the preschool calendar?
While you're getting up to do this, may I make a request to whoever does the website? If you click on the link that says calendar on the website, it takes us to the athletic calendar, which is very important. But could we have a link that takes us to the academic calendar? Because I routinely want to see that regularly, and I always have to search and find the link, because I just never save it, and I should just save it. I printed off a copy, and I should, I'm just for my own personal evidence.
I don't take care of that, but I will sure pass that along.
Thank you, and Annette, I can handle that because
Okay.
that would be under Justin DeVore's purview, and I'll see that he gets that message.
Thank you so much.
It could be that, and you could have an athletic.
Routine, yeah, but routine. Two bites.
We shared it for you.
Puts on the fridge.
So what this is tonight, I think, and Evan helped me out with this, is just to open up and schedule the public hearing for changes in the preschool calendar. So this is a calendar that's different than just the district calendar. So the biggest change that we've made from previous years for this coming year is typically preschool wouldn't start until after Labor Day. I think historically that was for teachers to, excuse me, get their home visits in, because that's something that's required for our preschool teachers to do in order for us to get the preschool funding. But in order to align with the district, with all of the other students and make things more efficient, our creating partner preschools like Central Preschool and St. John's, they all start day one when our kindergarten through 12 kids start. We're proposing to go ahead and start our preschoolers on the same day as our K through 12 students. So, and so what I did is just created a separate calendar that's just the Comet preschool. So they don't have classes on Monday, so you can see those are whited out there, but or blocked out there. But so that's just the biggest change, I guess, from previous years to this year.
But all the other dates are consistent with the K-12.
Yeah, like all the breaks are the same, all the PD days are the same. The only thing is just no Mondays, and then we're starting right with school, and then we're ending. Typically, they had ended a couple of weeks earlier. But we're gonna go right up until, I think we have it on the 24th, the 25th. We're gonna go ahead and have them end the same day too. We're gonna we have our graduation set for preschool. We're gonna have that on the 24th, the night before. So when the kids come in on that last day, they'll be good and tired. So, so that's what we're proposing, I guess, for next year.
Okay.
And then this has to stay open, right, Evan, for then approval next week for.
Yeah, so we set the time date for the public hearing, and then the public can comment on July 25th during the public hearing time period. If they have any changes, corrections, and then the board can vote to approve the calendar or not.
Okay. Can I have a motion? Set the date and time for public hearing.
I'll make a motion to set the date and time for public hearing on proposed 2022 preschool calendar. Monday, July 5th, 2022 at 6:15 in the high school library.
Second? Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to set the date and time for a public hearing on a proposed 2022-23 preschool calendar for Monday, July 25th, 2022 at 6:15 p.m. in the high school library. Any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed, say no. Passes 5-0. Okay, speaking of the Iowa Association of School Board Convention, we're going to discuss whether we want to participate in that. That is November 16th and 17th. We usually go down the night before, and then on the 16th they have pre-workshop, pre-convention workshops. So like they have several financial workshops. There's a board secretary workshop. There's, can't really remember what the other two are. I think it's on the IASB website. And you guys get emails about those, I think. So, sometimes we drive together with school vehicles, sometimes we have gone separately, everybody has their own room. So if spouses would want to come, I guess that's okay. They just can't go to the all the convention stuff. So I just wanted to let everybody know about that and just to talk about it, so who thinks they're gonna plan to go? I am. Josh is, because he's gonna be on the. What about you, Catherine? Okay, David?
I'll plan on going.
Yeah,
All right, with you.
right, and sometimes one administrator comes, or you could come, whatever, and then, we want to get hotels as soon as possible, because we don't want to have to walk 53 blocks. Can't do it until August 8th. Okay, well, check on that. Okay. All right, thank you. And we can take reservations and then we can go over to.
That's right.
Okay. All right, so the next item, consideration of consent agenda. Board, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda items as listed below. Although, is there any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. Okay. Then we just have important upcoming dates. I emailed you about a work session that will start at 5 o'clock on July 20th. And we're gonna have it here in the library rather than at the office in case people want to come. Okay. Okay. High school library, and our next board meeting will be July 25th. Also here at the high school library. And I am adjourning the meeting at 7:28 p.m. Done. I don't know where my gavel is, but. Thank you. Everyone.